This week on the Board Game Academic Podcast, we're rolling for insight, looting the archives, and navigating in conversation where critical hits meets critical thinking. Welcome to the Board Game Academic Podcast, where we explore the crossroads of scholarship, play, and practice. I'm your host, Christopher Carbone, scholar, educator, and of course, lifelong gamer. Each week this semester, we will discuss with brilliant minds how analog games inform real-world practices, support meaningful change, and the challenge for us to think critically, whether it's in the classroom, clinics, community, or beyond. This week, I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Christopher Rondeau. I am an academic, I'm a scholar, I am an avid gamer. I have been published in places like Pathfinder's Tianjia Character and World Guide, and I am a parent with a bunch of cats and lots of things to do.
Excellent, Chris. Well, thank you for joining us here on the podcast. And Chris, before we get into all of your scholarship that you produce and that you will present at the upcoming Board Game Academic Conference, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your favorite game or game system and how it's meaningful to you?
So I'm a mixed bag. For long-term games, when I'm thinking of campaigns that are going to last longer than, let's say, 3 months, 3 to 6 months, somewhere in that range, I really enjoy rules-heavy systems. So I grew up on something called Champions and Fantasy Hero, which is a classless, point-based system. You get a whole bunch of points, you get to spend it however you want to, and you basically get to make any character you want, but it's very rules-heavy because everything has to work together. Generally, that is a barrier to entry. So right now, I currently like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and Starfinder 2nd Edition that is coming out soon, maybe already out by the time this is released. And these rule systems, while they are heavy and while there are a lot of rules, there's a certain ease to them that if you're used to games like Dungeons and Dragons, you already have a good foundation for it. And the rules make sense to me in a way that it frees my mind to think about other things within gaming, right? I don't have to think about some rules that may be a little ambiguous to me. I get very clear rules so I can ignore the rules and focus on the things that interest me more rather than having to adjudicate things on the fly. So Pathfinder is my game of choice currently, and
Nice.
I play I game master with my home game and get to enjoy this, and I have all these books available to me to basically do whatever I want within a game. I want aliens, I have rules for those. If I want gunslingers, I want rules for that. If I want a guy who goes and is like an hunter and then makes guns based off monster parts, like if you think like Monster Hunter, I can make that there are rules there for beast guns. So everything that's available to me, I can generally find, with a few exceptions, and therefore I don't have to think about them. I can just think about the story going behind the mechanics.
Excellent. Well, Chris, what led you into taking tabletop gaming and the work that you've done into your scholarship?
Yeah, I feel that I am in the mix of being a academic and a creative mind. Really, a lot of people are one or the other. I am very fortunate. A lot of the academics I met in the analog gaming community try to be in the middle somewhere. But I started off as a game master. I was actually paid to do this from 2017 to 2018, we'll say, to 2021. I was interviewed for Polygon about being a paid game master, and while I can't prove it, I think I was one of the first people to make it a full-time job.
Nice.
So it paid through my master's degree. My master's degree was in writing. I was getting a creative writing major, and once we hit the pandemic, business was a little slow at times, and I was able to acquire a job being an adjunct faculty at a community college. And so because I have a master's in writing and I had this gaming background, it ended up being kind of like an interesting place to see where sort of how people view the gaming community now. Because of that, I've transitioned into academic scholarship. I'm acquiring my PhD from the University of Tulsa at where they are specifically allowing me to explore what tabletop gaming as a form of literature, and specifically, I'm studying what is agency and what is
Mm.
agency both in literature and what is agency in academic gaming. I'm not at my dissertation stage quite yet, so it's hard to know exactly what my final dissertation is going to look like. But we are exploring like what does it mean to be a person and how do you embody other people within that. So I'm able to apply that to my classrooms where fortunately or unfortunately, attention spans seem to be shrinking a little bit.
Sure.
So being able to enact certain rules through gamification
Yes.
does allow things like it's no longer just about like I don't know. Let's say I'm reading the autobiography of Angela Davis, right? Angela Davis,
Hmm.
activist, communist in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of people who don't quite understand who Angela Davis is, and I
Yes.
don't necessarily. I'm not endorsing any of her politics or anything like that, but being able to say, "Hey, this is you right now. These are your experiences. Let's gamify it and tell me what would need to happen to you to get to the same place that they are getting at. They are at right now, right? How far do you need to go to be making the same decisions that Angela Davis went through? Or we can apply this to fiction where we can think of like the Odyssey. Odyssey is a great thing
Mm.
to gamify because it's basically a D&D game in a lot of ways. So now you're saying, where do you have to be in Odysseus's mindset to make the same decisions, to yell at the people, at his crew, and to antagonize the Cyclops and do all those sort of things, and being able to just kind of explore like what it means to envelop that sort of lived experience almost.
Excellent. And obviously, you mentioned that the generation of students more and more have very short attention spans, obviously, typically because of technology. So, what has their general appraisal or outcomes been as far as you utilizing gamification, which is should be something that they're very familiar with from their own life, into this kind of educational format that typically doesn't benefit from any kind of gamification usage?
Yeah, so a lot of times when people think of gamification, it's really the reward system, right? The little bits that you get from um, uh, right? They have like Snapchat scores. We have points in games. We have like little completion tasks when you finish a Wordle for the first time, right?
Yes.
And so we incorporate gamification naturally, but what we have to adjust kind of in the classroom is the what is the reward structure.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I should mention I am studying English literature. I'm an
Yes.
English student. I'm approaching this from a rhetoric standpoint.
Of course.
That a lot of people don't see the reward of necessarily reading a piece of literature, or they don't see a
Mm.
reward of understanding what my classes are. Right? They like for better or for worse. And I thought this in my undergraduate. There are classes that I just don't want to take, and I just
Yes.
am there to get the credit. And then hopefully don't hurt my GPA too much, and then like move on to the things I'm interested in. And unfortunately, English is one of those subjects. So we build the classroom, or I guess I build the classroom with certain reward structures. One, the point system, for better or for
Yes.
worse, in a classroom is a way to look at it. But then we also begin to see the reward structure being in place for reading a textbook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I assign, let's like this past term, I've used a very short story by Ernest Hemingway. It's chaotic. It's a
Yes.
one page, and you don't really know what's going on until you read the whole thing like five times. Um, so being able to apply certain gamification techniques, like right now, I need you to go through every single sentence and write me commentary about every single sentence,
Yes.
right? And then providing stuff like this assigns basically a page worth of stuff that they have written, and then they associate that with whatever paper assignment I may assign
Nice.
for that. So they see the reward immediately from the reading, and then in theory, through our discussions, we get the deeper topic. A very short story is about it's a love story. It's very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
They're like in the middle of a war and that sort of thing. And so we ask this thing: if you are injured and you are running away from the enemy, what would you do in those situations? And just by incorporating that role play mindset, it provides a deeper insight into the lived experience of the characters of the story.
Excellent. And they generally have, this has helped. Have you done studies or have you looked at the grades, like improvement in grades, improvement in satisfaction, improvement in comprehension?
So I have to acknowledge that students lie to me, right? They're going to tell me what I want to hear.
Sure.
Um, the feedbacks that I have gotten through like people who've struggled with English have
Yes.
suddenly developed a little bit more interest in it,
Good.
or at least they tell me that. And so like when we get to a point where it's like, all right, we're in composition two, we're in the second
Mm-hmm.
semester, whatever the class is called for your university. You've had me for potentially a year now. I get a lot of
Yes.
repeat students, right?
That's a good sign.
Now we're going to read, I don't know, 100-page thing from Ted Chiang's Exhalation Stories, right? That book that came out, I think, in 2021 or 2022. Great science fiction piece here. There's a gamification component to it where to the sci-fi story. My interpretation of my classroom is they no longer fear the 100-page story.
Mm.
Right at this point, they would have read. I assign like American Born Chinese, the comic book. I will assign Mouse most likely throughout a semester. It changes every year because I get bored, but these sort of things. But when they get to the long novella story, and yeah, it's not like a 300-page, Great Expectations, but they can get to the 100-page story and they don't fear it. They're willing to tackle it. Maybe they're grumbling a little bit about it, but by the time we get to the novella and they have 2 weeks to read 100 pages and we're discussing it and all that sort of stuff, there's no longer that fear of
Mm.
being able to do this. I teach with subjective criticism in mind,
Sure.
where if we look at something like American Born Chinese, right? It's a comic book, now a Disney Plus series, only got one season. But the comic book has a very racist character within it. Um, its name is based off a derogatory towards Asian Americans, and he is a caricature. He's a stereotype, and so when we introduce this character within the classroom, through subjective criticism, we get to examine how the students react to it, and and then we apply that to real world scenarios. Right, this person said something is clearly a racist caricature. We are then applying our own interpretation. Why did you chuckle a little bit? Why were you uncomfortable? And
Yes.
then what do you have to do? Let's put yourself in that position through role playing, through gamification, to see how you would react in closer to a real world circumstance. And then we connect it to real world issues as well.
Yeah, of course.
And unfortunately, I think all of my students have observed racism in one way, shape, or form, or
Sure.
I guess the sense of othering. So
Yes.
talking points like this allows us to be able to explore subjective criticism and being able to internalize. If we feel discomfort, that's probably intentional on the part of the writer, right? So let's, now that we acknowledge our discomfort, or we acknowledge the satire, we acknowledge the humor, what is the author doing to make us feel that? And then that is the basis of our literary analysis. So through gamification and creating the lived experience and subjective criticism, at least that's how I organize my classroom.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And as far as this upcoming paper, since a lot of your scholarship here is practically based for practitioners, for educators, scholars to kind of utilize, and obviously for a lot of different professions to utilize that gamification. What will we take away, or what are the main points as far as your upcoming scholarship for the conference?
Yeah. So I'm talking about gamification in the classroom. Perhaps some of my discussion here is an introduction to that sort of thing. But I do base this off literary theory based on reader response theory. Reader response theory is this idea. Okay, this is going to get into real academic talk.
Let's do it.
There is criticism that is based off of, we're just looking at the text to analyze the story. What is
Yes.
the text doing? Let's look at the new criticism. Let's look at Kantian
Hmm.
things, Lecoq, all these names that I'm blinking because now I'm on microphone that I'm going to remember as soon as I turn the mic off. But all these different sort of ways to explore literature.
Yes.
And then as a response to that, reader response came out where it says, actually, let's look at the relationship between text and reader
Mm-hmm.
rather than simply look at the just the text itself.
Yes.
Someone like David Blake will say that the reader's the only thing that's important. Iser and Fish would say that there is a relationship between both. I'm overgeneralizing for the sake of time, but my research is there to take what is the role of the reader within literature, and then how can I apply that to game theory? So then we look at game theory and what is the role of the person
Mm-hmm.
within these things, right? As if I am sitting here and I'm playing, I don't know what's the popular game right now. Expedition 33 is currently
Sure.
one of the big games currently,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sitting there and I am becoming a lived experience of that story. I am making the
Mm.
morale decisions here. I am swinging the sword. I am doing the dodging and the parrying, and I'm yelling at the screen whenever things don't go well.
Yes.
And there is a lived experience there. I want to propose, at least through my research, and this paper acts as a preliminary to that. We'll see how where I get to by October, but I want to explore this idea of can a person create a lived experience through studying literature and gamification to be able to say, "Hey, I understand what it's like to
Mm.
be in this thing," and I think villains are going to be a great way to explore that, right? What do you have to do in literature to become a villain, and how can I apply that to gamification for you as a person to eventually get to the point where you can RP as a villain, right?
Yes.
um so let's um I think of things like The Handmaid's Tale, right? Handmaid's Tale,
Mm.
there are some very oppressive forces in The Handmaid's Tale. What has to happen in my lived experience for me to be willing to be the bad guy?
Sure.
And so by exploring this, I am in turn creating a lived experience. Or in theory, I'm creating at least a replica of a lived experience in an attempt to create a little more communication between people who may disagree. If we wanted to take this like in the political direction, let's take people from both sides of the political party, have them create a lived experience of
Sure.
the opposite side. And I'm not talking about like the extremes of the political party, but like what do I have to do to believe in this political standpoint? What do I have to do to believe in the other political standpoint through gamification in an attempt to create a little more one agency, right? And two understanding by creating a lived experience, especially through certain cultural holidays or certain pieces of literature that may not be based in our own experience. We can then create a certain amount of lived experience through gamification, and I want to kind of explore what that looks like. Uh, to be like, hey, I am an academic. What if I created a character based off of I don't know, an autobiography of someone who was in a gang, right?
Yes.
And I have some lived experience of that, but not to the extent of this autobiography I'm reading. Let's say, what do I have to do then to make those decisions that the person in the autobiography made? And so, beginning to understand that hopefully creates a little more emotion connection between people with differing points of view and understanding decisions, as opposed to just saying like this person's a villain, then the character in this book's a villain, this character person's a good guy. That's all I
Sure.
care about. I'm going to do my literary analysis based on what makes this person a good protagonist and an antagonist. Instead, I'm saying let's create the lived experience. And so through reader response theory, I'm hoping to come to some more definite conclusions within that, especially in a kind of a setting where I feel like people aren't talking
Sure.
to each other very much.
Well, it seems like the work that you're providing in the classroom to again to go over literature and kind of understand it, recontextualize it, to identify with it, so that there's some bleed into the character, so you can understand the text a lot better. It seems like there's also some insight and practical applications for your students to then go forth in the world and make meaningful contributions or critiques or just general reflections of what's happening out there and their role and how they're participating. So it seems like this is more of a project than just, did you read the book? did you understand the book? Did you, it seems like it's taken it to another level, which I'm really impressed with.
Yeah, I really want to push for empathy.
Yes.
Like, I want my students to not look at this as a grade, right? But to look
Yes.
at this as understanding empathetic perspectives, right? So when we read something that we may disagree with, and I try to, provide all sorts of different cultures, all sorts of different genres, right? We're looking at autobiography versus science fiction versus I did a Tolkien short story this past term. Looking at a variety of different things and then understanding the subjective experience, creating the lived experience to
Mm.
hopefully. My goal is to avoid the reactionary kind of culture that sometimes is created, and to step back and be like, all right, let's go into that lived experience. I think that while I'm teaching writing and I care deeply about their writing abilities, I care more about the mindset they get into when they are writing the paper to create that sort of lived experience. So maybe I'm not a very good English teacher in the sense that maybe my hyper focus is not on the writing itself, but it's kind of a collection of things. And I admit my class is probably a little harder than some of my colleagues.
Sure.
But I've had positive feedback, especially because those students haven't taken those other classes, so they have no basis to see how other first year composition instructors are approaching it. So they only have my lived experience. So whether another class is easier or harder may not be, while it's in my mindset, may not be in the student's mindset.
Well, I think just generally as students, I mean, through our own kind of educational system, at least here in the United States, going K through 12, we move away as time goes on from a very embodied, or as you were talking about, empathic kind of understanding of the world, right? If you take a baby, a toddler, a child, they don't really have a wealth of vocabulary, but what they do have is an instrument to empathetically connect and understand the world through an embodied kind of state. Whether that's touch or just feels right or wrong, or I connect with other people, that those kind of mirror neurons that kind of pop off. But as time goes on, the K through 12 kind of experience tends to distance from that empathetic human understanding and then becomes more analytically abstract, right? Like, instead of going, this is me, I am my body, I am this person, we go, I am my thoughts, I am my cognition, I am this analytical thing. And now the way we talk about ourselves now is like, I am this algorithm that's happening in my head. And we've really have massively left, this earlier understanding and instrumentality of understanding the world and connecting. So yes, maybe your students don't have at least a live experience of the, once again, cognitive, restating of the same thing over and over again, but maybe they're tapping into something more fundamental to understand, as you said, character within themselves and others, so that they can have a deeper appreciation and then can write something more complex. Because goodness only knows now with AI and ChatGPT and everything else, you can get that stuff. You can get the analytical stuff out there. You can get those kind of abridged bullet points. But can you get a sense of the character and even conceive of them in the world and their future? I mean, it seems like, Chris, you're really offering them extra dimensions at the same time.
Yeah, I think you are tagging on something that I would tell my students, like the humanness
Yes.
of literature. A lot of times when we look at words on a page, we immediately shut off the humanness of it, right? We're
Yes.
just here to get the story, but there's an author there, right? Like, there's an author who has written these things, and you as a reader are also human, right? The
Mm.
way you read something in the morning when you're fresh and you just had, at least for me, a cup of coffee, and uh, I am ready to read something. You
Mm.
tell me at 11 p.m. at night where I'm trying to like read something, my humanness changes
Yes.
because of these lived experience. I have students who work 8 hours, right? 8 hours, they go to school, they work 8 hours, and they come home and then they start their work.
Yes.
So like understanding that their humanness also exists, and that the mindset you are at, you change minute to minute, hour by hour, right? Like, if
Mm.
I start something in the morning. By my second hour of doing research, I'm hungry, right? Like, and then my humanist changes.
Yes.
Especially in the world, as you mentioned, with AI and this conversation here. AI loses the humanness of that. It
Yes.
loses the changing emotive state of a person. And while I'm not, I do approach this from the literature standpoint. I'm not like a psychology or cognitive expert in that sense. I think at least understanding that I can have empathy towards the humanness of my students allows the students to realize they can have empathy towards themselves, to be able to feel certain things within a
Mm.
text. Especially like in English classrooms, you
Mm.
read hard stuff, right? We read
Yes.
Mouse by Art Spiegelman. It's about World War II and the Holocaust, right?
Yes.
And, we talk about it being censored in certain places and all that sort of stuff and like how it works. And then they realize, like, oh, actually, I can feel bad about this, or I can kind of joke at the jokes there. I can react in a certain way based on my emotive state, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, and even if it's a role playing game, or it's literature, that hermeneutical circle where we've experienced a thing in a certain state of mind, we adapt to it, we consume it, we assimilate it, and then we are changed by it, and then we come back to it again and see things in a different light. I think that's so essential because, from a psychological point of view, so much of who we are is a narrative. It is not necessarily, fact or fiction, but the stories we tell about ourselves and the stories that we tell to each other. And I think that unpacking, which you're doing with the text, is so incredibly valuable for our young people who are seeking understanding and are in the fandom that we all swim in, right? All the fantasy, sci-fi genre kind of fandom. We see elements of ourselves. So when you're teaching literature, rhetoric, and you're going through all these books and the canon or the new canon, I get some of those things. I experience some of those things. Are some of those things me? And what can I do with those things moving forward? So I love that idea. The concept is, it's an incredible unpacking of the text, and of the text that is us as people. We're a text as well. We're written upon by a society, and we write upon others. So fantastic.
Yeah, I this past term, I don't know if I would repeat it,
Mm-hmm.
repeat this curriculum. I was teaching on the basis of, we're looking at different art forms and we're looking at different things. So we had a comic book, we had a short story, we listened to music, we listened to poetry, we watched a movie, we did Pixar shorts, which was a fun little right before spring break lesson.
Yeah.
And so it's like, just by introducing some of these ideas, my very last unit prior to them starting on their final paper and submitting their proposals was they were to play a game.
Yes.
And they were, and like video games, all of them are excited, right? And then I would ask them to, like, what is the act of pushing that button and getting that response
Sure.
mean? And suddenly, like, they are realizing that, like, hey, when I play a violent game, that I am making the active choice to be in that lived experience.
Yes.
When I am showing compassion in a game, I'm making that lived choice to be compassionate or humorous or whatnot. And I'm not making the argument that, like, video games make you more emotive, but it's interesting seeing them apply some of those things about subjective experience to
Mm-hmm.
things that they do sometimes on a regular basis, depending on the student, or their role in listening to, like, a Taylor Swift album, or I got a lot of Kendrick Lamar this past term.
Gotcha.
So, like, hearing these things and looking at the past Super Bowl halftime show,
Yes.
and all those different things, they are now becoming, they, or at least they're realizing the application to this.
Mm-hmm.
And while I have no doubt that half the students won't pick up a literature book, they'll probably read books, but not like what we would consider the canon.
Yes.
I can at least go with the comfort that they are thinking about their
Mm-hmm.
agency within the media that they intake.
Yes. Well, Chris, you're going to be part of Board Game Academics Journal Issue 3, and our upcoming conference will be happening October 4th and 5th at the National Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. And a lot of people will be attending, including other academics, gamers, professionals, practitioners. Obviously, your work is a work in progress, and you're working on this right now for the conference in October to present to the attendees there. Any takeaways that you're hoping that they'll get from it? Any applications that you're hoping that they'll be able to utilize in their own professional work or personal life or as a gamer?
Yeah, I think my intention is that people slow down a little bit when they intake media. I think we speed through things, right? I had to watch a movie for my master's degree or something like that, and I watched it at 2 times speed and got like the
Yes.
bare minimum from it to kind of like slow down and like pause once in a while and think about something that has happened, or like especially in gaming, analog gaming, I want them to like kind of decompress a little bit when they think,
Sure.
as opposed to just like, like I made the decision to save the town from these bandits, but I also killed bandits in the process, right? Like I want the moment, and I'm not saying you need to feel guilty or happy about
Mm-hmm.
any of it, but I want the moment where people can just take a breath and say like,
Mm.
this is how my actions are affecting the world within
Yes.
gamification. Same thing with reading, and like I want them to be able to pause after they read something meaningful and just think about it for like 5 seconds, and just kind of slow down. At least maybe that's my idealistic hope for it. I guess more practically, I hope that maybe some of these things can be applied to a classroom in multiple fields. We have people from different departments
Mm-hmm.
coming together for this. So hopefully, there's something that can be applied to multiple things. And ultimately, I just want some more people to play games with, if possible.
Absolutely. So, Chris, the Strong National Museum of Play, obviously a great museum for everything play based games, toys, archives, actual practical applications, and play with other people there. Is there any presentations or anything there that you're looking forward to seeing or people you're looking to meet?
First of all, I want to see these exhibits.
I
I don't
know, it's so
I don't
cool.
I don't know much about this place. I don't know what my registration covers, but I'm hoping to explore, these digital worlds one
Yes.
exhibits that they have up. It's kind of interesting to explore that without my kids, but
And let me answer
I'm
that question, Chris. It covers the whole weekend, full access. So I think that's going to be great.
great. Then I am there as soon as they open and leaving as
Yes.
soon as they close. Then, but exploring some of those things, especially without my kids. My daughter is 7 now, so
Aw.
I've experienced all these things for the last 7 years
Yes.
through the eyes of a child, and maybe just kind of take a moment and think of it through the eyes of an adult.
Ah,
Uh, but As far as the conference itself goes, I'm interested in this Mariah Kemp's "The Affordance of Queerness in Virtual D&D." I'm interested
nice.
in this conversation about virtualness, kind of in the conversation. Everything I talk about is definitely the analog. I'm not talking about playing on Roll20 or Foundry or any of these other systems. I'm talking about playing in person and having that kind of body language, I guess we can think of it that way.
Sure.
And virtual D&D with a topic like queerness just feels very interesting to me. There is an interesting Cards Against Humanity talk by I think it's Dan Tibbles, that I'm kind of interested in as well. So I'll be sure, like I have to look at the schedule when it does come out and see what I can attend while achieving all my goals. But those two talks are high up on my priority list.
Fantastic. Chris, everyone's going to be able to meet you. And if you would like to learn more about Chris's work and where to reach Chris, you'll find all of Chris's information in the show notes. Chris, again, thank you so much for joining us here. We're looking forward to meeting with you in October. And until next time, don't forget to register for the conference because you want to meet and talk to Chris and all these other great people there at boardgameacademics.com. And Chris, until next time, keep rolling and thinking critically, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.